Good evening, family. Thank you for joining us again in another version of the Journey 2020. Many of you on this Friday night are probably exhausted, not only physically, but also probably mentally with all of the events that have gone on this week. And I have to say that myself and my co-hosts, even up to the time that we're coming on the broadcast, have been talking about these many events. And of course, we're talking about the non-indictments, of the policemen in Ferguson, Missouri, and also the non-indictment of the policeman with the Errol Garner case in New York. But again, welcome and join us. We're going to have a lively discussion tonight, and we also have a guest that will join us, someone who some of you may know from a previous broadcast, Brother Haki Nkrumah. But one of the realities of life in Orlando are traffic jams. And you all may not think of Orlando as a place of traffic jams, but I can tell you, having been here now for 12 years, that the only cities that probably beat Orlando for traffic jams may be LA, New York, and possibly Boston. But well, let me not start on that negative.
You got the ATL though.
And also, how could I forget Atlanta? Because I've been caught up in many a traffic jam there too.
Yeah, Boston.
But that voice that you hear is my co-host, the inimitable Charles Morris. And Charles,
that's more like
go
the
ahead.
frustrated. No, just welcome to the Journey 2020. Charles Morris, happy to be here with you. It is an interesting time, I would say. There's so much to talk about, and just trying to find a place to start. But more importantly, I'm very prayerful. I have to be. I wanted to say something in reference to David Washington. I had a lengthy conversation with him. David Washington is a retired police detective out of New York City. Very humble gentleman, and he's one of my mentors, and I'm extremely close to Mr. Washington. And I loved to pick his brain a lot of times on different facets of life. And so I definitely had to give him a call and just wanted him to kind of share some light on what he thought, and we can kind of get into that a little later. But Aki is actually stuck in traffic because there's a concert around the corner at one of the churches, and so there's traffic everywhere, and John Young is backed up. For those who live in the Orlando area, John Young is backed up, so he did not know that he was going to be stuck in traffic, but he should be here shortly. And I asked him to come on the show today, way before all of this started happening, because I was telling you about his 10-week program that he's actually getting ready to start up again. And for those who don't know him, he has a very unique program called Young Fathers of Central Florida, and he mentors young fathers ages, I think it's 12 to 24. And people usually go like 12, 12. Like, yeah, there's some young fathers out there that are 12 years old, and he's been doing some magnificent things over the years. And I was invited to come and take part in the weekly meetings that they were having. It was such a success over the 10-week period that they wanted to do it again. So I thought that I would basically, well, what I want to do is I want to videotape it, make a show out of it. Okay, because to sit there and to hear the conversations that are taking place and to hear what these men, because a lot of the young men that were in there was maybe someone with 19, 20, 23, 28. and to hear the conversations and the things that we were talking about because we're open.
Right, right.
Okay, and I think that a lot of people would be very impressed
Mm.
with just the dialogue, the feedback, the questions that are being asked, and also just to hear them say, hey, you know what? If there's a cycle that needs to be broken, I would like to break this cycle. But more importantly, I'm here to try to be a better father.
Mm.
Despite the things or the obstacles that they have to overcome, whether or not Shaquita got issues,
Right.
or whether or not it's just trying to make ends meet,
Right.
or whether or not what is the best way. Because now that I even had heard a couple of them say this. I'm realizing that I'm in a dysfunctional relationship.
Mm.
So how can I better get her to understand?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't the conversation of it's anybody's fault,
Mm-hmm.
but can I do my part? And the questions are being asked.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to try to make the situation better on my end? Mainly because I'm trying to look out for the child. But I also heard them say, this is a woman that I love and that I care about, and I would like to think that I can have a future. You know, I'm in love.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm recognizing some things
Mm-hmm.
because of the conversation we're having.
Mm-hmm.
So let me reevaluate myself,
Mm-hmm.
the situation, but first let me think of this child. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of that. So what I
Yeah.
said was, I said, well, this is what I want to do.
Uh-huh.
I want to come in. Let's make a show out of this. We're going to post it on the internet. And guess what we're going to call it? We're going to call it A Better View.
Ah, love it. Okay.
So the name of the show is A Better View.
Okay. Wonderful.
And I actually sent you the email.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. You know, on this.
And they didn't meet.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't get the email that canceled the meeting.
Oh.
I was the only one there.
Oh, okay.
But I'm not on the list. I'm on his list, but I'm not on the list that goes out. But I'm on his list.
Oh,
So
okay.
he sent me the list to tell me that we're meeting Wednesday,
Right.
blah 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 blah. But
Right.
the email blast that goes out that sent out to say that the meeting has been canceled, we're starting next week.
Yeah.
I didn't get that email.
Ah, okay. Well, now I don't feel as bad because when I got the email, I said, "Oh man, I don't have enough time to really rearrange my schedule."
So you didn't
But it's
miss
gonna be-
anything.
Okay,
So,
good. Good.
which is fine because when I went to the downtown rec, I got to see some old friends,
Mm-hmm.
and we
Okay.
sat and talked.
Okay.
And then because I used to do a lot of things there back when I was with Orange TV,
Right.
and one of the ladies there who is now, I found out, the manager, who has always been very supportive of the things that I've been doing, promised to bring some kids to my annual event coming up on December 13th. So I was able to give her
Beautiful.
some flyers, have a conversation with her as well. And so it was another good. I had talked to her before about it, but it was just another way of just reconnecting to reassure that I wanted her to remember to
right.
have some kids come and that she can come as well. So
All right.
she,
All
you know,
right.
and I'm always thankful for her because I was having an event there about 3 years ago, and I left one of my. There's a little case I carry that has all my little whatnots in it, with my connections with all the cameras and all
right,
the
right,
adapters and everything. And I accidentally left it in the back of the building, and she found it and she took it inside because I was up all night going like, all these. It was it's a little thing that it's priceless,
Right.
Because there's just so much stuff in there,
Exactly.
and when you get home, you be like, oh my goodness. And so, and I called. She said, oh yeah, I got it. I saw it back there. I got it. I said, I gave her a big thank you.
Amen. Exactly. That's one of those things that you just absolutely thankful for. Yeah.
So he is on his way, but in the meantime, yeah.
Well, you know, one of the things, Charles, and I know that you've been working on the summit so much that, you know, that I'm going to kind of reverse our roles because you're always reminding me to talk about the events that I'm putting on. So I'm going to encourage you to talk a little bit more about the event that is coming up, the summit.
Okay, well, this is my 12th year.
Okay.
And when I originally thought of the main workshop, because we have the workshops for boys, girls, and parents.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so then we all come together for one.
Mm.
So when I originally thought of the main workshop, it was called "Are We Raising Our Kids to Be in Harm's Way?"
Wow.
Right now, I didn't know all this madness was going to take place because this was about 4 months ago.
Right, right,
And I
right,
had no
right,
idea. I mean, there was some stuff that had been
right.
taking place, of course,
Yeah.
because of all the stuff that had been going on, but not to the degree where it is now when, what's been going on in New York
Right.
City, Ohio.
I'm gonna, ask you to pause
Hmm.
and say that one of the things that I have admired about you, and I think that is why it allowed us to put on Journey 2020,
Hmm.
is that there are some brothers like you
Hmm.
who have remained concerned about the real deal of
Hmm.
what's going on in the community, and are not just reacting
Hmm.
to the flavor of the moment.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've heard you say over and over again is the need to raise our young men
Hmm.
so that they recognize their role and their responsibilities.
Well,
You know,
the
go
thing
ahead.
is that when I was with Orange TV and I think I did 3 summits on what to do in case you're stopped by a police officer. And
Mm.
those were always interesting big base because everybody have a story.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody have these encounters.
Right, right, right.
And when you have those encounters, I can share a different encounter, a different type of encounter with a police officer. But uh, during the time when we were doing this, we we did some reenactments,
Mm-hmm.
and we set up some scenarios of cops stopping, and was this good, was this bad,
Right.
blah 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
So I think in addition to what else is going on, we're going to do that as well. But I
Beautiful.
have some videos that are out there right now that I
Mm.
keep seeing on Facebook, and
Mm.
those videos are powerful.
Mm. Just to wind back a bit, many of us who have been struggling with the issue of being black while alive in America, this week, in many ways, felt like here we go again. Because we've seen the scenario played off so many times that of young and predominantly black men being accosted, being pursued, being shot, being killed by policemen. And the interesting thing about it is that, yes, many of the instances have involved white policemen, but we've also had instances where black policemen have also shot these young black men. And so many people would say, well, oh, it's not a race thing. But I would say to you that whether the shooter is a black cop or a white cop, the problem is our young black men are getting killed disproportionately. One of the things that statistics that many of you in the audience may be aware of is that with young black men, that they have a 21 times the amount of probability, 21 times the probability of being killed, by an act of murder than their white counterpart. That they have also 6 times the rate of being killed by a policeman than their white counterpart. So I would say to you that many individuals would say, well, why don't we simply teach these young black men how to act when they're confronted by police? And that's a critical, important piece. But we also need to take a look at structurally what's happening, to our, young black men in any encounter with law enforcement. And so tonight, and I see Hockey has just arrived and has managed to find his way here. But I also want to point out to you as the audience and ask the question, what do you think that it is possible for us to do as a community, as individuals, and as a people to do something to prevent this from continuing to happen? Haki, I was just saying to the audience and asking them a question about what they feel that we can do as individuals, as a community, and as a people to stop the repeat of instances that have happened in Ferguson, Missouri, to now 2 other cases that Charles and I were just talking about tonight of the young brother in Phoenix that was shot and killed while the police were pursuing him. And then one that I just heard about on the national news, but which is actually old. I'm hearing that this happened about 2 weeks ago, where again, young black man was shot in the hallway of a building, in his building, by a New York City policeman. And it is now being termed as a quote unquote accident. And that, and there is a thought that there may be an indictment brought, et cetera. So part of the question that I was throwing out to the audience, and I'm glad that you're here, because I know that you're going to talk about your program and what you've been doing with the young black men. But I'm wondering if you would just share any thoughts or feelings that you have about the subject, and what you think.
Well, I've been asked this question a lot over the last few weeks, and it's another program, because the young people I was speaking to about it, it runs so deep, and if we think it's going to be a quick fix, it's not going to happen. This is systematic. I mean, if you look at most of the officers who are in these cases of abuse, just look at their history. Look at their education. Look at their personal history, the relationships they've had with the community in which they serve, which most of the time is none. Look at their educational level, and just see who they are. And you'll see that the common denominator is always going to be the same. Uneducated, unfamiliar with the community. It's going to continually to happen. Or they have a history of law enforcement in their families. And so they feel they're entitled. A lot of them, they feel they're entitled to conduct business as they see fit. So we could talk about history, we could talk about economics, politics, but it's not just an easy answer. And some people want an easy answer, and they think that they can just look at the policemen themselves and say, okay, they're going to be a change. There have been young black boys being gunned down for years and years and years, and until we as a society, we can't do it as a community. Right. People think sometimes we can do things as a community. Oh, black folks, we have to do this or that. No, we have to do this as a society at whole. So one of the things that we work with our young men is to help educate them to where they understand how they're being viewed by law enforcement. Because when we talk about law enforcement, there's steps in law enforcement all the way up to the military. Right. And when you have local law enforcement who are getting advanced military equipment from the Army to bring in our communities, and then their excuse is, oh, well, the drug dealers are outgunning us. Okay. I mean, so it's a bigger picture. It's a much bigger picture. Until we prepared to look at that bigger picture, it's just like putting Band-Aids on a sore. Pretty much. And we can, protest, and we can speak out. We can do all those things. But then there's other halls in which we have to do those same things. Right. Look at the past elections. I mean, so it's going to be a
Okay.
lot more difficult because those same people that we're allowed to get in office in our local elections, in our states, those are the people that's going to control in the courtroom what happens, because that's what it is, the
Right.
courtroom.
Exactly.
The courtroom are not convicting these or even putting these guys up to go to court. They're just off. And by the way, let me take a cool million when I go.
Right. Okay. Okay. I hear you. I hear you.
Could you imagine? Shoot a brother, get $1 million.
Wow. Yeah.
That's basically what I mean. Come on, you shoot a black man, and whether it's Zimmerman, whether it's Darren Wilson or whomever it is, shoot this African American, they walking away with $1 million because these organizations are raising funds for their supposed to be their defense, but they don't even need a defense. They don't need a defense. So what happens with that money?
Interesting.
So now we got rants. We got a what is it? On their
bounty.
head, yeah, bounty on their heads. Shoot a black boy. And the thing that bothers me about a lot of this is, man, they're not even having weapons. I mean, a stolen bag of potato chips, Skittles.
Well, no.
Some of them and the one brother didn't have nothing.
Right, and he had bought those, by the way.
Which one?
The Skittles.
Yeah, oh yeah, the Skittles and
right.
iced tea.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but why are you shooting them so many times? Untrained, unskilled, unsympathetic, uneducated officers. Who's doing these things?
One of the things that I wanted to bring up during Saturday, the main topic, now that you started talking, I got to have you on the panel, by the way.
There you go.
I'm serious. I definitely got to have you on the panel. I asked David Washington, I said, I want you to explain something to me. Tell me, from your own perspective, as a police officer, I'm unarmed, it's you and I, and that's it. So, your training tells you the only option you have is to pull out a gun and shoot me. So now what you're telling me is you've gone to the Barney Fife School of Training. His response was, remember he had 25 years.
Right.
He said, Charles, I won't say that part. He told me no. He told me what would have happened to him if he had done that. But it goes back to the training, because my question that I have to us is that why the standard is so low to be a police officer. Because if it's
that's the point.
If it's just you and I have no weapon. If I'm a threat to you for you to pull out your gun, what kind of training is that? Because that's what he said. He said, that's not training.
Right.
That's not what we teach you. Okay? Because as we all know, so many times you see police officers and you look and you go, and it's either Becky or Shaquita or whoever it is, you look and you be like, if something break out in here, she gonna be in trouble. Or sometimes it's a he. You be like, and so the question is, why is the training what you, as far as the police officer, why is it so low? Because you know, once you're out there, it's a battlefield. So to become a police officer, really? Because you're gonna tell me it's just you and I one-on-one, and your training is you're gonna pull out a gun and shoot me. You need to find another occupation.
Absolutely.
So that's my question. Why is it that we as a country does not demand higher standards for police officers? Because if you're gonna tell me your only option for a person one-on-one is for you to pull out your gun, that's all you got? Why are you a police officer?
And then shoot 6 or 7 times.
Right, and then no, you need to be behind a desk pushing papers.
Absolutely.
Or something.
And not in law enforcement.
Because that's the real world out there.
And that's the point, Charles.
And you can't tell me as a police officer that's not real.
Right.
You can't go into this and going, well, you know, I'm not going to have these kind of encounters. That's crazy. I know it's crazy out there.
Yeah.
But that's your option.
That's what I'm saying. It's the education, the lack of education, lack of training. All of that goes into play.
Well, you know something, and I tell you, I'm not even going to give them that excuse. I'm not even going to give them that, because the despite lack of training, each one of us, you know, has a certain amount of, if you want to call it, common sense, okay? And each one of us has an amount of, if you want to call it, humanity. One of the things, in addition to the lack of training, that I want to put into the mix is that there is a mentality, that so-called blue line, that talks about, you know, especially in those police that are not familiar with our community, that simply look at it as our community, as a, if you want to call it, a neighborhood that they have to occupy, and almost come in, not almost, but come in as a soldier would come into a hostile environment. So that there's not the thought of a connectedness between you and me.
Well, you know, like a lot of times, because when they come in, especially by their whole aura, is like, but the whole thing is that to the people, like, why are you in our neighborhood? You know, like, why are you here?
Right.
Because from how I feeling you don't belong here.
Right.
And that's true.
And what I'm saying is that often is perpetuated, you know, by the kind of environment that they are constantly in, wherein some of the folks, one of the interesting movies way back was, and it's interesting that they had Denzel Washington play the bad guy supposedly, that movie Training Day.
Right.
Okay, and you had somebody come in who, again, although white, okay, was relatively, I'm going to call it naive.
Right.
But who was hipped to the way that, quote unquote, things are supposed to be by the mentality, and if you want to call it, the lack of morality that was not just, and again, I say it's interesting that they had the character be a black policeman, okay? But you could have turned him any which color, and it would have been him saying to this rookie, say, listen, man, forget all of that stuff that you learned in the academy. I'm going to show you how you're supposed to be out here in the streets. And I say that it is the same as an occupying army would deal with an enemy force.
They're giving them the equipment too.
Right.
But it's all those things, and I just think it's education. They're not they're uneducated. Most of these guys, they're unfamiliar with the communities they serve. Spend very little time there, and a lot of time they just feel that they're entitled to conduct the law in which they see fit, as opposed to chokehold was illegal, but let me use it anyway.
But two two things. One, the women hated Denzel playing that role, by the way.
Denzel, you can't do that.
We got a lot of flack with that, because during the NABJ conference, man, they showed it about 3 months before it came out, and boy, those women was but anyway.
I can't hang with you no more, Denzel. Go ahead.
The other thing too is I think more so the damage is done out here, where these people, or our people, being killed. But the damage is being more done over here by the court system, by not recognizing and doing what needs to be done. Because we got to protect our buddies, you know, and that's really what's happening. So I think as you talk about them out on the street, but also I think more damage is being done on the higher level. Somebody died over here, but then there's no justice
over there.
over there.
That's such a critical part. And it gets back to what Aki had mentioned about there being a structural problem, okay? And that is, one of the interesting things I was listening to this week was the talk about, well, why no indictment? And what was brought out was the fact that the prosecutors, who are now highly educated individuals, and this is how the system is so insidious, that these folks as the prosecutors, law degrees, right? Okay, might come from Georgetown or since we're in Florida, University of Florida Law School or whatever. And here it is, these folks, because they realize that as part of the system, that they have to get along with these other folks, our lesser educated policemen, that as in the Ferguson case and as in the New York case, the prosecutors did a little slick move, and that is that they so-called gave all of the evidence to the grand jury, okay? And so you had them spinning the process so that the grand jury, who is, if you want to call it the naive individuals, say, well, oh, I've got all of this information. But the real deal is, and I was listening to this the other day, that in something like 91% of the cases, the way that the prosecutor presents the case is the judgment that the grand jury comes out with. So if the prosecutor says, okay, you know, I'm not going to take the fall for this, I'm going to spin it so that the likelihood is that it's going to come out the way that I won't be looked at as an adversary to the police.
That's right.
That is going to come out, you know, in that way.
That's right.
So the system, you know, is in many ways rigged, you know, so that the way that the powers that be, I'm going to call it that want the outcome to be, is going to be the way that the entire system, you know, deems it to be. And so that as the slogan of this current move is that Black lives, you know, are also valuable. And when you think about at the bottom of some of what we're dealing with is just what I believe the three of us in this room have been saying over time, and that is that when you're looked at as undervalued, that you're expendable, that you are the enemy, okay, that you are not worthwhile, then I can see I'm going to be in the role of the policeman. If I put a few holes in you, okay, if you look like that you're going to threaten my well-being, and I may even beyond that have the fantasy that by shooting you and killing you, that I'm actually doing a favor to the community, okay? All right? Because I'm taking somebody who is, as back in slavery days, just another nigger off the streets, then as in Darren Wilson's view, as he said on that interview, well, I would have done the same thing, you know, if I had that opportunity again, you know? So we're really dealing with not only the lack of knowledge, the systematic or structural problem, but also that sense of dehumanizing someone so that you can do with them what you really feel that you want to do.
In that whole Gardner case, one part of that entire tape, it's a clear indication of everything you just said. When they had this man handcuffed, 7 officers around him, and there was a point where he put all his weight and pushed his head to the pavement.
Yeah.
As though that was abuse of at least abuse of force. He's hit that part bothered me so much when he just pressed and smashed that man's head in the pavement with all his weight.
Yeah.
Why was that? Why was there a need to do that? He was handcuffed. He was telling him he couldn't breathe.
Right.
What threat was it at all that gave you the right to press your hand and push his face into the pavement? When you watch that again, please look at that part.
You know, it's interesting that you said that, because it was so difficult for me to watch that whole scenario again. It was interesting. It was tonight when it was being played, you know, on the TV here. That was the first time I really looked at that. In fact, I commented to Charles, and I said, "Man, they're holding, his head down, you know, as you said, smashed on the ground." And I said, "How could you, as a human being?"
Right. So that's the humanity part you're talking about. That and how he viewed them as the way they used to define us, less than human. That was clearly indication. Who would do that? Especially when you talk about training. What training? You use an illegal hold on him. First of all, everything that officer did was out of the book. So, but that goes back to say again, they didn't want to
prosecute.
They didn't want to indict.
Exactly.
And then the other part too is the young man in Missouri when he went to the store. And what always gets me is that they will always talk in reference to, well, you know, he took some cigars. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, now we was once labeled as what, 1/3 of a person? Is it 1/3 or 1/4?
I think it's
2/3 of you.
Is it 2/3 or was it 2/5?
It was 2 something.
So now
we're less
than the value of some cigars.
Right.
So it's just interesting how do you have in one sentence cigars in a young man's life, and how we are seen, and how they label us less than a human being. You know, and it's just so interesting that
or straddling our sisters and beating them in the street, and we don't say nothing about that. That video, I couldn't sleep after watching that. Beating that, I'm talking about beating that woman, beating her.
Right.
You see that one?
We
just slid past the one that.
That's the case. In the
one that she was on the highway. And he straddled on her and started beating her like she was a man, a woman, a sister. But it's all systematic, man. It's it's like I said, it's like putting a Band-Aid. So if we don't deal with the entire system, then we just going to continue to just have these conversations because it's going to continue to happen.
Okay, now
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Charles, because I think we're segueing in the same direction. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was telling Dr. Robinson about the 10-week program, and I told him that when I was there, I was just in awe of the conversation, and that these young men were just talking about trying to be a better father, looking out for their children for the future, but they were taking their relationships serious, and that they were taking other avenues to try to deal with Shaquita and Martha and whoever. But I'm just saying they were trying to recognize if I am in a dysfunctional situation, what can I do about it myself, and taking on the responsibility. In addition to some of the other things that we were talking about. So once you kind of quickly just describe the what?
I have to do it my little church deals and whatnot. To our audience, because we always want to be accurate with our information, and that was that the 3/5 compromise is what it is. 3/5.
3/5.
So we make sure we get each fifth in there. So, but that we were considered 3/5 of a man. Okay,
Right.
but go ahead. I just want to make sure that we're on point.
Oh, what you're referring to is the Young Fatherhood Initiative with the City of Orlando, that Young Fathers of Central Florida partnered up to establish a 10-week program for our young fathers. But before I even get there, people oftentimes ask why we work with one of the most difficult populations in the country,
Well,
young
actually,
men.
Actually, I'm sorry. For those who are watching for the first time, just tell them about your program real quick, and then you can.
Young Fathers of Central
Right.
Florida is the 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides services and support to young fathers between the ages of 14 to 24.
Right. Yeah.
We have 5 programs.
Actually, I said 12. But
Right.
14.
14.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I said
No,
12.
we have a 12-year-old father.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
so,
right. See, that's where I get it from. See,
Right.
I knew you had a 12-year-old.
Right,
Yeah,
the program is designed for 14 to 24,
21,
but
okay.
we do, like I got a call a couple months ago from a mom who had her son was 12 years old, and the child mother was 12 years old. Mother-to-be was 12 years old. She was pregnant, and they had difficulties because the mother wanted to raise the child, but the young woman's mom, they didn't want to raise the child.
I remember you
They wanted to
mentioned
put
that,
the
yeah.
child up for adoption,
Yeah.
and you know, but they both was 12. Find out that she, the young lady, began having sex at 9. She got raped. She was raped by family members, and so that's where you get that 12-year-old from.
Right.
And people oftentimes, we have 13-year-old, 14-year-olds, fathers and mothers. Just like I told the mom of the young lady that if the young man family wanted to raise a child, that's probably how it would go. So, but she wanted to just get rid of the whole situation because you know she didn't want.
Right.
And a lot of times parents feel that they failed. You know, here it is, my daughter's 12-year-old and pregnant. What didn't I do, or what should I have done?
Right.
So a lot of times they feel that. But that's what the program Chuck is talking about is the 10-week program that we have set up. But as I mentioned before, going to that, a lot of people would ask me, why we work with these young guys? Aren't they difficult? But then I also have to look at, and that's what we work with them on understanding, is that here in America, African Americans, we have the highest infant mortality rate in the country.
Yeah.
So here we are, and we don't get any demonstrations about that. So more of our babies are dying from newborn to 18 months than any other group by far.
Okay.
We don't get demonstration about that. Not to say they shouldn't be demonstrating about these young men that's getting shot in the street, but for every one of those brothers get shot in the street, there's 50 of our babies dying.
Wow.
Right.
That's important. Yeah.
I could say that again. 50
Okay.
is a conservative number. Very, very conservative. And when I say 50, I'm not talking about in the country. I'm talking statewide.
Wow.
Okay? So that's why it's vitally important that we begin working with these young men and young women at that early age. Because we're not going to have a demonstration.
Right.
We're not going to have any of that. And, you know, like I would tell people, when the brother down in Atlanta, I don't know if he really did it, but that's what they say. Williams was killing the little kids.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They was killing the little black boys in Atlanta. People was in outrage. And that was maybe, how many boys he killed? 6 or 7?
Actually, I think
No, more than that.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
10?
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it
20.
was more.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was
100?
No,
200?
no. I thought it was
300?
20.
Yeah, yeah. It
Something.
was like 20.
400? 1,000? You get where I'm going?
Right.
Yeah.
That's how many of our babies been dying
Right. Yeah.
every year.
Right.
Wow.
Okay, for all type of reasons, and most of which could have been prevented because it was due as of, as a result of poor health, no postnatal care, no prenatal care, poverty. That's why it's important for these young men to be financially responsible, because the poverty level is so high with single mothers. A big part of that is the lack of financial support from these young fathers. So if these young fathers are financially responsible, then the poverty level wouldn't be so high for them. So you guys heard this spiel from me before, but I'm not trivializing anyone's life. But what I'm saying is that we need to wake up. We need to wake up and understand how many of our babies are not even making it to 18 months.
And we need to hear that message over and over, Haki. So
18 months. But we won't get any demonstrations about that. We won't get any people, we won't get people to even talk about it. And all these quote unquote child advocacy groups or child support groups. How many times you hear that? How many times you hear about that?
Right.
You know, we might hear a little about SIDS or shaken baby syndrome. We might hear some of those things. But let's just talk about the other realities there. That's why it's vitally important that we've dedicated all our programming to teen and young fathers who are less educated, who are less financially secure, who don't have any political support because they don't vote. So politicians don't really care about them. Child support not chasing after them. They don't have a job. The unemployment rate for teen males in this country, black, white, all together, is 25%. For African Americans, it's close to 40%. During the Great Depression, the unemployment rate was 22%. So that's the financial situation that they're in.
Yeah.
So that's why we work with them. 40-year-old man probably not having any more children. But that 15, 16, 17-year-old, he's continually having children and not even thinking about it. That's why it's critical that we get to them.
No, that's a critical point. One of the things, and I think Charles has started talking about, in addressing that, just talk a little bit about that 10-week program, because I think that's critical.
Yeah, the 10-week program, we meet once a week, and the present cycle we're going to be meeting at the Downtown Rec Center in Orlando. And you want to run off some of the 10-week topics?
Introduction to pre-test.
Yeah, we do introductions, and then we do a pre-test just to get the basic knowledge of what they have on responsible fatherhood, on a lot of different topics that we give.
Okay.
Right. Responsible fatherhood.
Yeah, responsible fatherhood. We talk about what it takes to be a father, a responsible father. Basic things like, if you're a young father, do you have a library card? If you don't have a library card, you have to have one, because that's where a lot of inexpensive activities you can have that's readily available for your child. Simply having a library card, having a photo identification, having a driver's license. It's hard to work if you don't have a driver's license.
Right.
So those are basic things in responsible fatherhood. That's just a few that we want them to have.
Right.
And in some of our programs, like our Teen Fatherhood Academy, that's required. This program is not required, but we strongly encourage. But some of the programs, it's required in order for them to continue. So they have to show us photo ID. Look at Trayvon Martin. He didn't have a photo identification. If it wasn't for that phone and his father calling, he might be buried at John Doe.
Wow.
And a lot of our young kids, especially my Just a Gentleman, my little kids, my 9 to 13-year-old, it's like none of them have photo identification. And a lot of them walk at least 5 or 6 miles back and forth from the community center to their homes. But a lot of them just don't have identification. So things like that are important. Driver's license and all that. Bank account, they need a bank account. If they can't get a bank account, we don't have any time for you in the program. A bank account is $10. And if they can't find $10 to open up a bank account, especially if they're on child support, they definitely need to have a bank account. So those are the things in responsible fatherhood that we discuss.
Father's rights.
Father's rights. What rights do they have as a father? A lot of fathers don't know. But the biggest issue in Chuck was a couple of these meetings where a lot of fathers haven't established their paternal rights. So they're not on the birth certificates. They haven't taken a DNA test, but they think they're the father. And unfortunately, there's a lot of cases, many cases where these young men raise these children and come to find out they're not even their children.
They're really their biological
Right.
kids,
So that's why we feel that. We tell them serious, without a doubt. You need to establish paternity. You need to establish that you're a father, one way or another.
Okay.
All right, because you don't have any parental rights to do anything. You can't even go to the school and get your child if she's sick if the mother's not around. If the mother didn't put your name on the list to pick them up.
Right.
So
right. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is that, often the story is told about young men denying that they're the father, but also one of the things that I've run into in my clinical practice is young men wanting to take the if you will, the responsibility of being the dad, but often just as you're saying about proving that they are the dad. Have you encountered that in your program, and how do you deal with that?
What, the guys that?
Yeah, that say, well, listen, I think this is my child.
Oh, they just get a paternity test.
Okay.
And we have different ways in which they can do that because it's not, cheap.
Right.
But any guy that wants a paternity test that comes to us, we find a way to get him the test.
Okay,
You know,
that's
but
important to know.
that's a myth. That's a continued myth that these young men are estranged, don't care about their child, and you know, they might not care so much about the baby mother because in most cases that we deal with, a lot of times the baby mother don't know them and they don't know the baby mama. They just hooked up. They just hooked up, had sex, unprotected, and you know, young ladies would always ask me, you know, Miss Haki, why he don't love me, little Raheem? I said, well, he don't know you, little Raheem. He don't even know you. I said, what's his shoe size? What's his favorite color? What's his mama name? What's his birthday? I don't know, but he was cute. Okay, so and I'm not blaming a woman, but I'm just saying, like a lot of organizations that work with young women, we need to address those issues. You know, because and then now the guy, he running around screwing anything that comes his way. But that's the big, that's another story why he's like that.
Exactly. So that what I hear you saying, there's responsibility on both sides.
Absolutely, absolutely. And years ago, we also provide parent training. Years ago, we would only have just fathers, but now we invite the moms in too, because a lot of times they don't know, and fathers don't know how to articulate what they learn in these trainings. So we invite the moms too, because unfortunately, a lot of these mothers, with all these organizations out here, a lot of these young women don't know what they're doing. You know, if you don't know what a breast pump is, and you, and I can go on, things that they don't know. What they are. They don't know forms of birth control. You know, so, and then there's a whole psychological thing, you know, why girls don't, you know, make these guys wear these condoms, because they have control. They have control. Unless the guy rape them, she has control to take her drawers off and allow this man to be in her, and that's take her most precious jewel. That's something that she can control that, but she's dealing with a whole bunch in her mind, you know, as well. Okay. You know, so, but those are all other stories that, all other sessions that we can talk about. But both our young men, all our young men and our women, all of them need help. Okay. They need help. We just can't, that's why people say, I thought you just work with guys. No, when we have the baby mothers that's there and she wants to learn and get support, we help the family now. So, and that's more difficult for us, but we just can't leave these young women not having places to go. And you would just assume that they got so many women out there that do all this help, but a lot of the teen girls and the young girls, they a lot of time they get caught in the middle, especially the ones that's 18, 19, because you know it's
when you say get caught in the middle,
they get caught in the middle of not getting support from their family because their mother might have been disappointed in them. Some even get kicked out, and their girlfriends can't support them. You know, a lot of times girlfriend tell them the wrong thing. Girl, you should just give him some cereal, something like that. No, he's a newborn. You shouldn't be doing that. So, you know, they're caught up where they're not getting support. And teens, young teens, they get a lot, like the Beta Center. You have places for the young. And then, so that 18, 19, 20 range, they
kind of almost
they caught in the middle. They like, I'm grown, I'm not grown. You know, because if you're 19 years old with a baby, everyone say, you grown, girl. You know, you grown because you have a baby. So they're just caught in the middle. A lot of women, you know, a lot of young women, and these are the young mothers of the fathers. I have a program, Young Father Institute at Bethune-Cookman University. And what happens there a lot of times, when you have athletes that's for the fathers and the baby mother goes to the university as well, a lot of times the mother's the one that drop out. And because no matter how good the guy is, he could be sitting on the bench. He think he going to the NFL or the NBA. So she ends up dropping out. And if he doesn't make it, then that's where that dynamic there has issues. That's why at the Young Father Institute at Cookman, most of the issues the father had with co-parenting. Working with the mother, and our goal was to try to help keep both of them in school, the mother and the father. But the mother was the young girl was the one usually, you know, one to drop out.
I think, Charles, you had a few other pieces there to talk about as far as the
program. You laughing at Chuck?
No, I was laughing because I remember the session on corporal punishment. That's why I started laughing. But that's one of the words. But there's child support and co-parenting. Did you mention? Just
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about-
sort of. We do the co-parenting. No matter, I can start an entire business with adults, grown folks, married folks on co-parenting, because it's difficult raising a child, especially this day and age. It's very, very difficult. So that's the issue that a lot of the young men have, and the child support. Having guys try to run from it, because a lot of guys run from it, and we actually tell guys, your baby mother start telling you she's gonna take you to child support, say, come on, let's go. Because we like when guys are on child support and have a visitation order. Some of our programs, we require that they have to have, if they're not the primary caregiver, they have to have a child support order and a visitation order. So that means if before we're gonna help you, you have to say, I'm going to be financially responsible for this child consistently. Not like when I get some money, I'll give it to him. No. You need to consistently provide financial support to that child. You should also visit that child on a regular. Don't tell us, man, I'll go see my baby when I get a chance. No. You don't have a job in the first place. You're not in school. So what do you mean when you get a chance? You got all the chance in the world. Boy, so... You know what I mean? So child support, we just don't want them to run from it, because too many, if we have this ideal of, if we run, they can't catch us.
Then there's
which is not true.
Employment and skill building.
Skill building and employment. We want guys that have jobs, but if you don't have a job, obtain a skill to where you can be financially secure and you can financially support your child. So that's very, very important. That's just as important as education, being in some type of school, and employment, having a job, seeking a job, and self skills or skills building. Acquire a skill, carpentry, construction. Do something. Be able to make money some way, somehow, legally.
Okay. I'm glad you put that legally part in.
I gotta put that in there, bro. Cause they be saying, but like he said, we got to hustle. We got to get some paper.
I hear you.
I said, bro, I ain't mean that. I ain't mean to run no guns,
I'm telling you, Hockey, we definitely gonna have to have you come on again, brother, because it just occurs to me we're right at the 8 o'clock hour, and there's just so much more that needs to be said. But Charles, I'm going to let you close it out this time, because, I think you have a lot of thought that you want to put to it.
Oh, wow.
The conference.
Well, I was telling him earlier that I was looking forward to, and like I said, I definitely got to have you on the panel this coming week.
Oh, okay. That's something else. Okay.
I'm serious. I'm serious. Because, to be honest, I'm a little nervous.
Right.
And the reason why I'm a little nervous is because I don't want to come across as being hostile or just angry because I have so much to say. So
you want other people to do it. I get you, bro. I get you.
Well, what I mean by that is, well, you know what? I really didn't think of it that way, but that's a good idea.
As if that wasn't
I did not think about that, but because, see, unfortunately, Dr. Robinson won't be there because I wanted him to bring up that part about how.
No. See, wait a minute. Now, see.
You heard me earlier. That's why he said, hey, I want you on the panel.
No, because that whole process of like, okay, well, now I'm dealing with, some black men, so I need bigger and more powerful bullets and all this other stuff that they. No, I'm serious because I mean.
Oh yeah, right. That I brought up, in the drug law.
Right, because he researched that. That was part of like a legislation or something.
Yeah.
So that whole thing of just like, oh well, what is this with this mentality?
Wilson said he was a demon, right?
Right.
I shot him because he was a demon.
Right. That's it. Way that he looked.
It's just like and so this whole thing, but the reality of it is, see, it's hard for me to stay away from the reality, and so I'm praying on it because I don't want, whether or not it's my sponsors, the little bit that the little ones that I do have, and part of it is sponsored by the Orange County the Orange County Sheriff Office. Part of it is sponsored by the police department here. But the truth is the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to stay, and keep it real.
Right.
You need to be nervous then because you can't do that, Chuck. But it's a good idea. Have other people, you know.
Exactly.
But
So I'm going like, okay, so because there's a video that I'm going to show, and that video going to tell it all. Well, not tell it, but that video is so powerful. It's just powerful because it's right in your face.
Right.
It's right in your face, you know. And then I'm going to show it to you when the show is over.
But it's serious, Chuck. We're at that point. It's serious. It has to be.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that when you have a police officer with a lady and her hands are tied behind her back and she's like this, and when you watch the video, when the public watches, all they see is that he's just hitting her in her back. But what they don't know is he's purposely trying to punch her in her kidneys.
Right.
See, they don't know that. But what he's doing is he's trying to hit her in her kidneys, which means he's trying to cause permanent damage to her. You know, but what you see is you just seeing him hitting her in the, you know, but he's purposely trying to hit her in her kidneys. And it's just a continuation of, you know, this. So as I close out,
Okay.
I'm just saying. Okay. As they say, the journey is from me to you and from you to me. And with that, we hoping that you're having a blessed holiday season. I don't know why people can't say why you can't have a Merry Christmas. I don't know what's wrong with people out there. Whatever.
Right.
Please have a Merry. But we're gonna be back before Christmas.
There you go.
We definitely got to have you come back.
Yes.
Okay. We definitely got to have you. There's so much to talk about, and we can finish up this right here.
There you go.
Because we also have the resources. There's a whole bunch of resources.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of resources out there that we need to talk
That's
about.
it.
All right.
Well, a good question as we're closing out.
Okay.
Are we? Because I know that you're going to be prepping for the summit on Saturday.
Right.
Is it possible to do a part 2 next week?
Well, you know, like I said, as a matter of fact, with Miss Love coming, who's also going to be part of the show.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That would be. Are you available next week?
I don't know. I'll check.
Okay. Well, there's a possibility he might be back next week.
No. Okay. Okay.
You be blessed. See. All right.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Good night, folks.
Good night. Yes. Thank you for having me.